Ren Burke. This is my cat Lola. We live in Fort Collins, Colorado. Lola is just one of the many animals in my life. The others live in another dimension, in my head. And I bring them to life in multi-layered paintings like this owl that I'm doing today. This is my studio. I've got my paints over there. I've got my brushes over there. And I've got a whole bunch of glass. I have everything I need to make my three-dimensional paintings. First thing I'm going to do is sketch out my idea. Because owls are so cool how they can move their eyes independently, I'm going to try and duplicate that with my drawing. I'm going to try and use my own eye as a model. Now that I've got my pencil sketch all done, I'm going to separate the layers and use 3 different colors to draw out the design so I know what to put on each layer of glass. Each color represents a different layer. I've got red for the foreground, I've got blue for the middle ground, and I've got green for the background. Now I'm going to start tracing the different layers onto pieces of glass that I've already prepared. I've taped up the edges of the glass to keep myself from getting cut and also to give me a place to handle them. I'm going to trace the first layer using a black permanent marker. I'm tracing this onto the glass from the drawing to act as a guide to help me when I start to paint. I do a lot of animal paintings. I like cats a lot. I like birds, obviously. I've got my first layer done, and now I'm going to work on the second layer, which is including the clouds and some trees. Now I'm going to draw over the third layer, which is green, and then I'll be ready to paint. I've got my foreground, my middle ground, and my background. I'm ready to paint. I use oil paints just because I like their blendability. They stay wetter longer. I'm going to start on the branch. I'm using kind of a mix of magenta and purple, plus some highlight and some low light shadow. I need to lay on the paint really thick because that makes it more opaque, less transparent. As I paint, I'm constantly flipping the piece of glass over so I can see what it's going to look like when it's done. I started off doing just oil paintings on canvas, but then I got a good look at the bottom of my glass palette, and I thought that was pretty cool. Now that the branch is done, I'm going to start in on the owl. He's going to be more earth tones, kind of browns and ochres and siennas. Lola from the pound. She's kind of the mascot of the studio. She likes to hang out in here while I'm working. For the owl's open eye, I'm going to use black, yellow, and a nice bright white highlight. My foreground looks good. Now I'm going to move on to the middle ground, which has the clouds and the trees. To give the trees a little more texture and interest, I scratch through them with the end of my paintbrush. The clouds are 2 layers of paint, kind of a white and a blue. So I also scratch through them, kind of an outline. I've already finished the trees on this third layer. I'm going to work on the moon and the stars, and to give them the really shiny, shimmery look of moon and stars, I'm going to use silver leaf. I use something called sizing, which is an adhesive for the leafing. I apply the sizing with this flat brush for the moon. For the stars, since they're so tiny, I use this very tiny brush. To pick up the leaf, because it's so delicate, I take a clean, dry brush and get some static going. And then, I very carefully lift it up. The sizing makes the leafing stick, and so I can just brush away all the loose stuff. For the stars, I just take my little excess pieces and dab them on. The glass is all clean, I'm ready to assemble. This is a backing board that I've gone ahead and made. The backing board is made of plywood. To assemble, I'm going to take these 8x10 pieces of black foam core. I'm going to take my straight edge and my trusty utility knife. I'm going to cut the center out of them, and this is going to create the spacer, which is going to make the depth between the layers of glass. Now in 3D. I've got all my foam core spacers cut. Now I'm ready to start putting it together. I take my first layer, the front layer, with the owl, flip it around, facing out, and then I rest it very carefully into the frame. I'm going to take one of my foam core spacers and I'm going to put it on top of the owl. Now I'm ready for the second layer. I'm going to put it on top of the first spacer. And now for another spacer. I'm ready to place the back piece of glass. Now for the final spacer and my back piece of wood. It's a pre-made frame and I've got a pre-made backing for it. My multi-layer painting is done. This owl is out of my head and coming at you in 3D.